The vice chair of the Libertarian Party, Arvin Vohra, is convinced that Trump will feel that his open war with the media will give him the upper hand.
I don't expect it's going to be much worse for Trump than it otherwise would have been. In fact, you could argue that Trump's taking a preemptive stance on this is letting people know that he's fully aware of this and he's not going to play nice with the media if the media is not going to give him the same treatment that they would give to a Democratic president. So by calling them out on it early, instead of letting the media be sort of insidious and subtle and tricky about it, it kind of forces the media to declare an open war and prevent that sort of hidden bias and turn it into an obvious bias. We're already seeing that disconnect between what Americans believe and what the media believes, and now Trump making that obvious and open, if anything, is just bringing to light what everyone already knows.
In fact, alternative facts have become such a phenomenon, it sent George Orwell's famous novel 1984 right back into the bestsellers list. The book was first published more than 70 years ago and describes a society where facts are distorted and suppressed. Orwell presents the notion of double think, meaning the ability to believe two contradictory things simultaneously. And that's got people drawing parallels with Trump's claims about record attendance figures for his inauguration. Murat Gazdiev explains.
The signs are ominous. Trump comes to power and 1984 flies off the shelves. You know, the last time that happened, well, it was when we found out that Obama's mass surveillance network was spying on the whole world. But I digress. 1984 is apt like never before. The Pravda Act, a bill that would make it mandatory for Californian schools to teach children about how Russian hackers put Trump into power. The proof? Well, U.S. intelligence agencies said so. That's enough to indoctrinate children.
And there's no question that Russia has a very robust system of putting out fake news and other types of propaganda.
Trust in big media. Trust in government. Trust in Big Brother. The European Union has created an agency comparable to the Ministry of Truth to decide what's real and what's fake. And anything pro-Russian is, of course, taboo. Germany's Facebook censor has reportedly threatened to label any news story which doubts that Russia hacked the US election as fake news.
We all know the term post-truth. It was chosen as the word of the year by the German Language Society in 2016. It means emotion and uncertain facts dominate the thinking about a topic.
And if you can't stop fake news by shutting down all emotions, well, consider getting your cyber vaccine. A new approach pioneered by sociologists at Cambridge to win your trust.
We are permanently at war, it seems, with an enemy. That enemy is, in this case, Russia, although there was no need for Russia to be our enemy at all. And we must be treated to a half hour of hate, although in our case it's 24 hours of hate. Hate, fear, loathing, insecurity, all these are being inculcated in the population in a way that seeks to blind them to the reality. And that's not going to change by giving them a kind of fake news vaccine.
The temptation is obvious: to own information, to monopolize your trust, and feed you well-filtered news. After all, Orwell said it himself. Reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else. Murat Gazdiev, RT.
The European Parliament's to investigate the British government's treatment of EU nationals after the UK voted to leave the bloc. A Dutch Liberal MEP, Sophie Veld, called on Parliament to look into cases where EU nationals have faced expulsion, red tape and harassment when trying to secure their future in the UK.
People feel they are being harassed. Why is the British government trying to make it so hard for people who have been living in the UK for decades, who have set up a family there, work there? It is their home. What sort of signal are they trying to send out to these people?
For now, information has come to light about two such cases. Monique Hawkins, a software engineer from the Netherlands, was ordered to leave. That's despite her being married to a UK citizen and having spent more than 20 years in the country. A German citizen, Sam Schwarzkopf, in a similar situation after having lived in the UK for 17 years. And we got reaction from investigative journalist Willy van Dam.
The fact that the European Parliament took this, members of the European Parliament, I must say, took this up, it proves the tense situation and the aggressive nature brewing beneath the surface between Brussels, Europeans, the European Union and the UK. So it doesn't merit an investigation anyway. That's for certain. It's pure bureaucracy, rudeness, incompetence, I would say, even by this Department of the United Kingdom.
The Home Office has rejected the accusations, saying the rights of EU nationals in the UK remain unchanged and they don't require any additional documents to prove their status. Nevertheless, the move in the European Parliament has not come as all that much of a surprise. Since the UK voted to part ways with the bloc, some European politicians have openly displayed their frustration with the country.
You cannot have one foot in and one foot out, destroying with the foot that stands outside everything that's been built and getting to reap the fruits of what works for the United Kingdom.
We need more clarity, more certainty. Therefore, I urge the Prime Minister to trigger Article 50 as soon as possible.
Well, 7 months ago, a narrow majority of British voters decided to leave the EU in a referendum. But to start the divorce process, the government has to invoke Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty. However, this week, the Supreme Court ruled the Prime Minister cannot do that without the approval of Parliament. It's thought more than half of MPs originally backed the Remain camp. However, it's not believed they would do that now, with analysts saying they'd be risking political suicide, ultimately going against the will of their constituencies. The same thoughts are shared by Professor Stephen Hassler from the Global Policy Institute in London.
I don't think we've ever had a bill to the House of Commons without a white paper before. This is the most extraordinary situation that Parliament's getting itself into, and it's only getting itself into it for this reason, that most parliamentarians think the Brexit result was a mistake, but they can't take on the will of the people at this stage because the Telegraph and the Mail will call them enemies of the people and they'll be in trouble in their constituencies. So this is, quite rightly in my view, a delaying tactic to give more time for people to think about this whole issue. And there's also the possibility, and we might explore this, and it will become clear sooner or later, that at some point in the process the British government may walk away from negotiations altogether and therefore say to everybody, well, there's nothing to negotiate about.
All right, still lots of news coming your way here on the programme today on RT International, including far-right movements are surging in Germany. This amid the continued migrant crisis. We're back in a moment.